So so now we have so how many we said 72 hours. So let's say you have 120 hours. So you have 3 weeks. Um, I don't we could potentially map it out now, but what I would say you have to think through is um, when we when we talk about you know there's aspects of Goodjelly where like comparatively speaking, we're using loose process. So you all can adapt it to your kind of your style and what works for you. And there's a whole lot of tools that some people are drawn to, some aren't. But one that may be interesting from a just initial starting point perspective is that the kind of the planning ratio.
Mm.
So if you have 120 hours, how many of those hours are going to be on research? What percentage? And then you have, with another writer, we're talking like how precisely she's tracking time. And she went out and bought a year-long planner where she could track in 15-minute increments. And I was like, oh my goodness, I was just suggesting for 2 weeks to get data. But since you're dealing with only 3 weeks of time, even though it's spread out over 9 months, there is likely a little higher level of watching that to really
Mm.
honor all your other priorities, but making sure you can shift faster if you need to adjust your timeline, because with always it's that deadline is out there and we want if you're going to put a due date in, we want to make it real, yet we also want to be flexible if like the reality is, okay, I thought through all this and now I have new data in February that means maybe it needs to be, maybe it could be I actually could get this done in July, or maybe it needs to be October. We never know where it's going to go as we engage and play, but having a sense of, okay, a percentage of my time will go to the writing. I have to time box the research, so it's only 5% of my total 3 week. That's probably a big one because you could probably spend the whole 3 weeks on research, right? And this is a historical novel, not a historical nonfiction book.
Right.
Um, the other thing that I'm thinking, if you make a decision, so also from a planning perspective, you have to put, well, you don't have to do anything, but I invite you to put tickets on your board that says make a decision, research the conferences, make a decision on which conferences I'm going to, right? That you have those decision tickets to honor the thinking time and kind of you're doing prioritization work. Will it work okay if I go away for this weekend? And the other thing that I would think through is if you make a decision to do conferences, that throws, probably jacks up the actual time you're going to spend on this, right? That's just a reality because I mean, not only your time in that conference, the packing time, the prep time, and all that's great. And what we're talking about right now with the decision making and talking about you going to a conference and how realistically that's going to obviously jack up your time some. So let's talk about that as well, and the ground gather grow framework, because that, just from a pure process support perspective, that is exactly designed for what you're talking about, and that you recognize that is great because you're not caught sideways and it's not invisible work. So that is huge that you're already tuned into that. So for folks watching this, the jam method, Lisa knows the method. And so what I wanted to talk about in context of this is this one with you getting real and everything we're talking about. Let's get real on the time frame. Let's get real about the decision making. You're saying, hey, I want to get real on the reality of if I go to those conferences, that's going to jack up the time. Plus, I'm going to have that trailing time for integration, thinking through just the excitement of that and wanting to use it. So, that's part of power, is to get real, even as you're, not putting yourself into a punishing schedule, not being brutal with yourself, talking through this now so you can get relief and not feel like, okay, I just signed myself up for something for the next 9 months that is just going to drag on my energy level, not only on my creative writing, but everything else. And then we're going to make sure you can, this is the Get Swagger is really under smart processes where you're getting that tools and that optimization. So the ground, gather, grow framework acknowledges that and says, okay, how am I heading into that conference with clarity? And then when I'm there, how am I almost, the idea of a romp daily, but we call those gather sessions. Okay. So you're going through your notes. You're already doing a like these are my action items, like maybe having a notebook where you're pulling out the books you want to get. So you're not waiting to just the end to have to process everything.
Mhm.
And you're creating a ground, gather, grow. Those processes also a close center connect process where you're opening wide to all this new information. And then at the end of the day, you're coming back and you're saying, and I'm Lisa. And I've heard people say you should do this and you shouldn't do. Conferences are great with that, where people saying shoulds all the time,
Right.
right? And you're not that young writer you were before, but you can get caught up in it of like, oh, yes, I shouldn't be doing this, even though if you know in your heart of hearts, this actually is what I am going to do. It's not should or shouldn't. It's this is the way I roll. Okay. And so that closing and returning to you again grounds you. You gather yourself back, you gather the knowledge, and then the grow is the final step where you're hitting that recalibration point after, but it's a smoother on ramp to that. And you're also, we also have the process. You watch the time away process video. Have you watched that one in the
Not recently. I don't
that
remember.
yeah, all these things that we do a lot of process around what you just described. Not only do you have, but you have to integrate back into your life. And so how do you ramp down? A lot of people will go to a conference and, as one of the writers said, somehow right before I go on a trip, I think I'm going to get a to-do list of things done that have been on my to-do list for 2 years, but I'm just all going to get it done right before I rush off for the airport. So
Right.
everybody kind of jams it up, and then they jam it back, like where if you have I don't know if that clap is going to be pleasant on the recording, but it's what you do. A lot of people do. They have that experience, of so we want you to have this. You're saying, okay, I'm gradually down ramping before the conference to give yourself time. I mean, all this stuff takes time to pack, to, make sure, I don't know, plants are covered or whatever is covered. Who's ever taking, if you're missing a day of looking after your grandchild, who's covering that day? And then you want that ramp up. So at all times, we want to make the things that we can make easy, easy.
Mhm.
And we want to, if you, so you, one of the things you can think about, Lisa, is that 120 hours, does that include conference times if you make that decision? I mean, that's going to be hard if it does. It would just be hard. But, you know, being realistic about kind of the your round writerly work, the administrative aspects, getting these kind of things prepped. And yeah. So we've talked about a lot of process ideas. and a lot of planning ideas. But looking at this list we have and what you wrote down, if we just put a pin in, we know realistically that getting real, that the conferences will take more time than this 100, this 3 weeks of total time that is spread out over 9 months. How does it just, without doing any analysis, without doing any ratio and percentages, is it feeling doable? Gut
I
check.
feel very doable. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, how are ways? So we have, you're going to make some kind of countdown or thermometer, like that you have this much time. What are other things that you're going to do process wise that you know from Goodjelly or from your own larger jam toolkit? For people listening, we have a lot of process tools, things like ground, gather, grow, and the process Lisa's talking about with the board. And what I always emphasize is every creator and every person has, if you claim them and own them, you have a larger set of tools around that. And that is your full jam toolkit. So, what are things that will help you keep on track if, let's
Number
say,
number one is blocking off the appointments with myself
hmm,
on my general calendar so that
okay,
protecting that time.
okay. So that's grounded power. That's getting real. And that's also, there's that right after get real, it's get guts, which is about boundaries and protecting your time and protecting your mindset. And so, so let's say someone says, "Oh, but I really need this appointment." Are you going to treat this with the same um,
Yes,
as your work?
absolutely.
It is now recorded, Lisa, and will be going public. So we can have we can have check-in throughout the year. It's going to be a whole, story. And
Yeah.
how is Lisa doing? What's the thermometer? Isn't that
I'm also likely to get tempted with like a spontaneous social request with somebody that I haven't had a chance to visit with. And so protecting my time, I have to be a little more creative with that spontaneous request and say, I'm not available until, and then allow that
yeah.
writing time to happen. So
Yeah.
that's really more at risk. And I think my mindset prior has been squeeze in the creative writing time when
Hmm.
you can. And so there's a flip. And now it's block off the creative writing time and fit up the other stuff around it.
Yeah, so what's interesting is you just went around the whole core, three core resolutions of smart process. I have this block calendar. It's very low level, effective, low level process if you hold it. But you'll only hold it if you have grounded power and are protecting your time. And then the third piece you just wove in, expansive kindness, which is the shift. I just had someone say to me, I looked at the JAM method and everything made sense till you got to expansive kindness. What does that have to do with now you've been in Goodjelly a while, so you know how integral it is. And I said, that's interesting. This person wanted is absolutely helping me make it clearer and get the Goodjelly word out. And I said that the reason that it is so foreign of a conversation in process for creative people is part of the problem, is why I created Goodjelly. And so, and that shift, it's so interesting what you said. I squeezed it in. I had to fit it in the corners. It was like this, Cinderella stepchild that is just, maybe she gets to come out. And
Right.
but the shift in expansive kindness when you start integrating that into your process is from harshness actually to spaciousness.
Mhm.
So, so what would be an interesting theme for you to help you, and you can like, I want to be I want maybe someone listening to this is like, oh, Lisa's going to have to give up all her fun, the spontaneous fun that people, but you can, that can also be fun, like the way you connect with them. Oh my gosh, I so want to see you. And I have this, I have 120 hours. Will you support me? And can we have, can we book it three months out? Or I have this time slot, or can we book it after November and celebrate with me? If these are people who, you are connected with and are connected with you, hopefully they're going to be like, heck yeah, let's wait a month and then,
Yeah,
I'll buy the party hats.
right,
So it doesn't all have to be doom and gloom,
right.
right? So first of all, you're getting to neutral on a certain level. This
Mhm.
is equal to my real work. And then we
Ab-
can, right? Okay. And then how can you even expand the spaciousness more by thinking in advance, how are you going to create more zhuzh in these 3 hours of your time? Like more fun, more like, oh, it is like, yeah, I have to do the work, but wow, when I get to the creative writing work, yes, I may be wrestling and having to make decisions about the timeline, but just the experience of coming back into that work just feels good.